Robert Fox is defense editor at London Evening Standard. Welcome to our program, Mr. Fox.
Hello.
Russian dictator Vladimir Putin has agreed to partial ceasefire in the air, according to the US President Donald Trump. However, Russia continues to attack Ukraine with missiles and drones right now. What is your assessment of the results of this phone call between Trump and Vladimir Putin, results of this deal?
Well, I don't think there's really a deal, because the thing that is so clear from the phone call is that they both have a different approach to this. One is thinking very short-term, Trump, and one thinks very long-term, which is Vladimir Putin. And Putin is said to have agreed to all kinds of things, and he may have agreed to them, but he hasn't fulfilled them. And you're quite right that the first thing, allegedly, was that he had agreed not to attack energy centers in Ukraine. And then it happened. 2-3 facilities were attacked overnight, and at least one hospital. So what is has to be drawn from that is that any hope which the Trump White House wanted, the hope that they said that they wanted this to lead into long-term talks, seems now to have gone far, far away and not to be in the intention of Putin at all. By the way, I think with that, we have to say it's very similar to what we heard about Gaza, where Israel has resumed full-scale hostilities in the Gaza Strip, despite the alleged agreement with Hamas, the three-phase peace agreement leading to a long-term negotiation, a long-term resolution. So I think I really throw my hands in the air and say, I don't see this going anywhere. And I think, I'm sorry to say, as things now stand in Ukraine, the war goes on.
From your perspective, why did Vladimir Putin agree to this partial ceasefire in the air if he would not like to halt his attacks on Ukraine? Do you see this as a humiliation of Donald Trump, because Vladimir Putin has promised to halt attacks on energy infrastructure?
I think it's very simple. I think it's part of Putin's mind games, and that they each think that they can outgame each other. But it's quite clear that Putin is playing a very long game. He's playing the game of Machiavelli, really. He is seeing where the weakness of the opponent is and where he can ensure the strengthening of his power at all costs. And to answer your game, yes, to your question, it is a game of cat and mouse. And Mr. Putin very much thinks he's the cat.
And also, I would like to cover with you a recent phone call between US President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. What is your assessment of this phone conversation between both leaders?
Well, again, I'm sorry to focus on Trump, is that Trump said the most startling thing was that the US could take control of the Zaporizhzhia power plant and get it going again in everybody's interest. I mean, this in a way is fantapolitica, as the Italians would say, is fantasy, because I cannot see in terms of hostility, which don't seem like ending soon, American engineers going into Zaporizhzhia, and so therefore it's hypothetical. And I think that probably immediately after the event that Trump probably knew it, but it was a classic piece of gesture politics, which is really aimed at I'm sorry to say, at a domestic audience. And I think you would like me to say that it's aimed at taking into consideration the domestic audience with you in Ukraine. I don't think it is at all. I think it's the way Trump is projecting his second administration as the real tough guy, that all bets are off now. And I will tell you how I can make America great again based on the idea of the art of the deal. Well, so far it hasn't been terribly successful, has it? And actually the record of the first Trump presidency isn't terribly good. But that's what he's saying. I can do it. I can take a big, bold gesture. And we heard the manifesto even before he took office this time round, that I can resolve these conflicts in 24 hours. He's not going to be able to do it in 24 weeks. It's pretty clear. And I think for Ukraine, this is where the Europeans are strengthening their position. It's taking a long time and will take a long time. But the idea that you can negotiate about a chunk of real estate, as Trump sees it, in the middle of Europe, where you have no title, you're not the owner at all, is seeing. I'm looking for the right word. I think it's really bizarre. Is the word that I'm looking for. And looking in detail at the situation in Zaporizhia, and one of the directors of the plant has given an excellent interview to Le Monde, the French Le Monde, and saying how terribly difficult all this is to get the plant going again, even if it wasn't on the front line. And Russia intends to keep it on the front line, I think, for the foreseeable weeks and months.
Let's also cover Vladimir Putin. What do you expect from Putin in the next stages of negotiations, and do you feel that he could also face some pressure from his inner circle on these negotiations and a ceasefire deal?
Well, I'm no more expert than anybody, and probably way back on the inner circle, but the inner circle is what really counts, as you say. And he is looking to the medium to long term, and suddenly there are quite unmistakable signs that he's in a hurry. What does he want to do? He's got to secure the position, the economy. How long can it take the pressure that he has put the economy under? It's a full-blown war economy, 5 million people directly engaged in war, whether on the front line, whether in manufacture, whether in the finance. It is absolutely dependent, keeping it going at this rate, on China. Above all, the technical assistance that it's getting, plus supplies, as we know, from North Korea and bits and pieces in terms of drones, although I think the materiel support from Iran will be less and less significant. But why am I saying this? I'm saying this because I see this growing activity with Belarus, the growing activity in the Caucasus. He's trying to lay out his claim that this is the centrality of Russian power in the middle of Europe, that the Ukrainian Russian people are one people, they cannot be divided, and this is the central fact of the great power of Eurasia. This is it was hinted at in his famous Munich Security Conference speech, which was quite mild in its rhetoric in 2007. But more interesting is the high-flown rhetoric of the essay about the Ukrainian and Russian destiny, the destiny of their one and undivided people, in July 2021. And I think that for Putin, it must be quite a thought now. Is this really going to take him 10 years? Can he really get it done within the span of what would be the Trump administration? Though I have no doubt, by the way, that Trump will try and extend his mandate. He will try to ignore the normal electoral process in the United States, I think, come the time, and watch for that when it happens. But just to go back, is that Putin has got a time scale on what he wants to do. And that is why I think that he is going to be increasingly desperate. He wants to do a deal with America because that gets him away from the embrace of China, that in fact he looked at Russia, his Russia, after all, for all its mighty claims, is going to be a client of China. And I think this is very much in play. Now, what is happening with the inner circle is very, very difficult to discern, because there are lots of people that I would like to know more about and what they are saying to President Putin. But starting with Elvira Nabiullina, the governor of the central bank. I mean, can the economy sustain this for 6 months more? Because I think part of the plan in the next 6 months, and that's why he will be working with asymmetric tactics all over Europe, is to get sanctions lifted, particularly on gas and oil exports. if the discounted oil exports, which aren't hugely advantageous, but at least it's a sale, if there's some constraint on those to India, there's a problem. And he desperately needs to sell gas at price to Europe. Germany, Italy are the obvious ones, and they're going to have less interest in that.
Also, Bloomberg reported that Vladimir Putin would like the United States to halt security assistance for Ukraine and to halt providing Ukraine with intelligence. These are Vladimir Putin's terms for a ceasefire deal. What is your reaction to this?
Well, of course, I think I'm afraid to say that I'm pretty skeptical about Trump America, and it's the thing about as a Western European, I have to say the real difficulty with Trump's approach is that it's not that he's unreliable; he's completely unpredictable, and I think that this is where. I'm sure it's being discussed in my country, just in the north part of London, at the meeting of defence planners in Northwood. They're getting together to look at contingencies. I don't think, by the way, that they're talking about a peace monitoring or assurance force to go into Ukraine. I think that is just not there at the moment. But it really speaks more to your point that what do you do when you simply cannot rely on American solidarity in the Western European North Atlantic Alliance, namely NATO, and then if it's going to turn off its intelligence assets rather like a tap? Because after all, we have seen this crucially, and it played a critical part in the battle there over Kursk. Now, I think the turning off and turning on after the row in the White House, I think we're going to see all this again. And I think that the core European players, and they're led by a trio, it has to be said now, the odd trio, but interesting, are Starmer of my country, Macron, who is being very clear and forthright, and Friedrich Merz, because I think that there is a growing sensation in Germany of the real jeopardy that they're in for this, that this trouble, this on-off war with Russia is not going to stop, and it's not going to stop in Ukraine.
You just mentioned about the meeting of military planners in the United Kingdom. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has been discussing this idea of deploying troops to Ukraine. Moreover, British special forces are being put on a high alert, on standby, to get ready for possible deployment to Ukraine. How can you assess the possibility of such mission being done without Russia's approval?
I think it's completely unrealistic. I think that actually that's the politics. And that's the advertisement, could I say. Because I think they'll be doing something really rather different. And it'll be more of what I've just been describing to you in terms of preparation, contingency, long-term intelligence. And long-term intelligence and communication. Communication is so critical outside America. Can they, with Galileo and other systems, actually obviate, in other words, move aside from GPS, but above all Starlink? Because we know Starlink was always there, and it's Musk's great weapon. And the more Musk indicates this, the more Western Europeans, for example, recognize how unreliable it is. And I think curiously, in Northwood, although we've had the advertisement, as I say, from Tkiie about we're thinking of this and we're thinking of that, I think there's no forced generation for groups of forces to go into Ukraine at the moment. But as for the SAS, I don't think you should believe half of what you hear about it. Because I think whatever the SAS has needed to do, it's done already. Can I leave it like that with you?